she thought she'd been stood up again. Another attempt to find love broken before it even began. 6:47 p.m. Kayla Emerson looked at her phone for the 7th time in 3 minutes. The date was set for 6:30. 17 minutes late. At a corner table in Maple Avenue Cafe, she held a cup of chamomile tea gone cold. The warm glow of the hanging lamps, usually enough to make this place feel cozy in the fall, now seemed to shrink, pressing against her chest. Around her, people leaned in close, their laughter soft as commas between the drifting jazz above. Only she sat alone. 5 more minutes, she told herself. Then she'd text Diane, the kind co-worker who'd arranged this blind date, that maybe blind dates just weren't for her. That after 2 years devoted entirely to her vet clinic, maybe she wasn't ready to step outside the walls she'd built. 6:51. The bell above the door chimed softly like someone tapping a cup. Kayla looked up, a thin thread of hope flashing before she could catch it. Not a man in his 30s wearing a nice shirt. 2 little girls, twins, maybe 6 years old. Curly brown hair bouncing with each step, green eyes scanning the room until they landed on the corner table where a woman was just about to give up. Matching red coats, hand in hand. They walked straight toward Kayla with the confidence that made adults scoot their chairs aside. The taller one looked up, voice polite but firm. "Are you? Miss Kayla?" Kayla blinked. "That's right. And you are?" "I'm Daisy," she said, holding out her sister's hand. "And this is Hazel. Our dad says he's sorry for being late." The room tilted like a teacup nudged too hard. Their dad, Matthew Caldwell. Diane hadn't mentioned kids, let alone twins. Hazel bowed her head, her voice barely a whisper. Dad had to stay because of something urgent. Daisy put a finger to her lips. "Hazel." Then she sighed, sounding like a tired grown-up. "We're telling the truth. Dad doesn't know we came, but he is sorry. We heard him last night." Last night, Kayla leaned forward, forgetting she'd felt disappointed at all. Hazel knotted curls, bouncing like little punctuation marks. "We pretended to be asleep." Someone called Dad in the hallway. They said the new library had foundation trouble. Dad kept saying he couldn't believe it was happening tonight. He said he had something very important at Maple Avenue, and you two knew this was the place. Kayla smiled, feeling her question slide easily across the wooden table. "We're very smart," Daisy said, simply not bragging, just stating a fact. And Dad wrote it on the kitchen calendar. He circled it 3 times and drew a smiley face. Something warm and sharp bloomed in Kayla's chest. A smiley face. "Dad ironed his shirt, too," Hazel whispered like she was afraid to pop a soap bubble. "He never ironed shirts." Kayla let out a small laugh. The 2 serious little faces across from her had just turned a lonely evening into something with direction. "Would you like to sit with me for a while?" Hot chocolate. 2 pairs of eyes lit up like Christmas lights just plugged in. Daisy ran to the window and waved to an older woman in a parked car, a wave that was both permission and celebration. When the hot chocolate arrived, whipped cream piled high like tiny mountains, the girls soon had matching white mustaches, making them look like 2 miniature professors. Kayla laughed an easy, unguarded laugh, as if setting down a weight she hadn't realized was heavy. The story opened like a window on a calmer night their mother had passed 2 years ago, quickly from a brain illness. Their dad had learned to braid hair from YouTube in a week. It was messy at first, but he got the hang of it. He made 3 cheese sandwiches, sang their mom's favorite lullabies, his voice not as pretty, but we don't tell him that. Kayla pictured the man she hadn't yet met staying up late, watching tutorials, standing over the sink with a frying pan and slices of bread, walking through a dim house, yet keeping rhythm for 2 little girls who needed him to be strong. Dad was really nervous about tonight? Hazel whispered, like sharing a secret they weren't supposed to have overheard. He tried on 4 shirts. Daisy lowered her voice, imitating him. "Hi, I'm Matthew." "Good evening, Miss Kayla. I'm Matthew Caldwell." Hazel widened her eyes, putting a tiny hand to her chest. Then he said a bad word by accident and went, "Forget it, I'll just be myself." Kayla laughed loudly this time. "Our dad wants to be here," Daisy said, serious again, analyzing the moment like a logic problem. "He never breaks promises. So we know the thing at the site must be really serious." Hazel added softly, "Dad says safety is his responsibility." "Responsibility," Daisy repeated, emphasizing the word. Kayla nodded slowly. She understood now these weren't just sweet kids. They were protectors guarding their father's fragile joy the way he guarded their days. Her phone buzzed. A message from Diane, heard from Matthew, yet he's not picking up. Kayla glanced at the clock. 7:25. If he'd gone to the site around 5:30, he might be finishing up soon. The thought came light but clear. How about we bring dinner to your dad? Two faces lit up like windows filling with light. Really? Really? Kayla smiled, opening her phone. What does he like? Chinese food from Golden Palace on 3rd. He loves orange chicken and always gets extra sweet and sour pork, fried rice, and egg rolls. Lots of fried rice. Kayla placed the order, adding enough for the construction crew, too. While they waited, the girls told her about the treehouse their dad had built over 3 months of weekends, and how the password was Mommy's Angels, because that's what she used to call us. Kayla blinked, and her eyelashes barely managed to hold back a tear that didn't want to fall. Mrs. Ferguson's sedan rolled slowly around the curved headlights, sweeping across the warning signs lined up along the iron fence. The library construction site looked like a giant skeleton growing in the dark steel columns, stabbing upward, crossbeams stretching like open arms, temporary wooden planks forming walkways. Floodlights cast sharp contrasts of light and shadow, and fine sawdust drifted low, glittering like rain in the white glare. From inside the car, Kayla could see the scattered movement of hard hats and hear the steady growl of the generator, an iron heart keeping the night shift alive. On Daisy's lap sat the large Golden Palace takeout bag. Hazel held another, the scent of orange chicken and sweet vinegar filling the car. Both girls sat upright, balancing carefully over each speed bump, wearing the serious expressions of people on a mission. Kayla glanced back and smiled just enough to calm them. She held a smaller bag for the security guard, remembering the girl's words, so he won't feel left out. The car stopped beside the row of trailers serving as the temporary office. Mrs. Ferguson turned off the engine, leaned over, her voice still soft and reassuring. "Your dad's in there, right, Miss Kayla? Go with them. I'll stay here. Call me if you need." She held out her hand. Kayla placed the car keys in her palm. They exchanged a look that said this night would be one to remember. They stepped out. The night wind carried the smell of raw wood and metal. Daisy tiptoed to peek through the fogged trailer window, then turned and gave Hazel a practiced nod, their plan in motion. Knock, say the first line, hold up the food, and then let Dad take it from there. 3 knocks, quick and neat. Papers rustled inside a chair, scraped the floor, and the door opened. Matthew appeared in the narrow doorway, sleeves rolled to his elbows, tie stuffed hastily into his pocket, hair slightly tousled. His blue shirt was streaked with dust, a faint smear of graphite across his left hand. He looked first at Daisy, then Hazel, then Kayla, his eyes catching softly as if recognizing something that finally fit. "You're Kayla," he said, not as a question, but as a fact that landed perfectly. "And how did you surprise Daisy?" grinned the childlike smile, switching the lights back on. "We brought dinner." Hazel lifted her bag. "We brought some for the guard, too." 2 men in hard hats passed behind Matthew, grabbing the bags with playful nods. "Good luck, Boss One," whispered, still holding a steel ruler like punctuation to his joke. The door closed, and silence settled like a thin blanket. Matthew set the blueprints aside, took a breath, and finally said what he'd meant to hours ago. "I'm sorry. I thought I'd finish early, just a few minutes late. I meant to text while cleaning up." Kayla nodded, not pushing. She unpacked the food, the orange zest rising into the air like quiet warmth, softening the room's edges. "Orange chicken loses its crunch if it sits too long," she said, not blaming, not teasing. Hazel opened the fried rice box, steam brushing her cheeks. Daisy divided the dipping sauces like a little ceremony. Matthew stood a moment longer, then smiled, the kind that drops the weight from your shoulders. "You saw the smiley face on the calendar, didn't you?" he asked, half embarrassed. "We saw everything," Daisy said calmly enough to make Hazel giggle. They pushed the stack of blueprints aside with gentle care, as if tucking in someone to sleep. Beneath lay yellow sticky notes scribbled with neat urgency. Soil report, revised anchor bolts, rebar density. Kayla glanced over them, not understanding all of it but sensing the quiet precision behind each word. She served fried rice to the girls, first slid a box of spring rolls toward Matthew. The sound of paper rustling, chopsticks tapping, and soft chewing made the room feel like a kitchen settling into rhythm. "So you really practiced your introduction 4 times in the mirror?" Kayla asked, her tone light as a weather talk. Daisy deepened her voice dramatically. "Hi, I'm Matthew." "Hello, Kayla," Hazel whispered wide-eyed. Then he said a bad word and decided to be himself. Matthew laughed, pressing a hand to his forehead in mock defeat. "You too." He didn't finish, but the rest was there in his smile. Halfway through the meal, his phone buzzed Diane's message, flashing on the screen. Heard from him, yet Kayla glanced, then quietly locked it and slid it away. After this, she murmured to herself, "Everything will get easier." Hazel picked up a spring roll, blew on it twice, and placed it on Kayla's plate. "This one's the crispiest," she declared, with the pure certainty only children have. The moment arrived without fanfare. Kayla and Matthew's eyes met through the rising steam of fried rice. Neither looked away. 1 second, just long enough to know that what started as a ruined evening could begin again, right in the middle. Hazel broke the quiet perfectly. "Serious? Dad, you're going to ask Miss Kayla out again, right? And be on time this time." Matthew nearly choked on a spring roll. Daisy quickly poured him water. Kayla calmly added more rice. "I like pancakes," she said. "Someone makes butterfly ones, don't they?" The twins gasped and high-fived not too loudly. Saturday pancakes were now officially noted, if not on the kitchen calendar, then somewhere in the minds of 3 grown hearts and 2 little ones. When they cleaned up, Daisy gathered the containers. Hazel folded the paper bags neatly. Matthew carried the leftovers out to the guards. A distant "thanks, boss" echoed back. He lingered in the doorway a few seconds, watching the 3 inside as if unsure whether this was tonight or a dream he hoped would last. "Thank you," he said to Kayla, nothing more. She nodded, answering a promise neither had spoken yet. Daisy whispered to Hazel, "Mission accomplished." Matthew ruffled their hair. "I heard that, you little agents." Outside, the floodlights still shone white. Inside, the night had softened. Kayla looked at the rolled-up blueprints tied with an elastic band and thought about foundations, how the unseen things can hold up an entire structure. The evening no longer tasted bitter like 647. It smelled of orange and vanilla on her sleeve, and somewhere in a kitchen calendar another smiley face was waiting for Saturday morning. 7:58 a.m. Saturday. Morning light lay over the kitchen table like a thin veil. Butter melted on a hot pan, vanilla swirled through gentle smoke, and coffee dripped steadily through the filter into a glass cup. Kayla stood on the step, the cool door frame resting against her arm, heartbeat steady like someone who had practiced breathing before diving into winter water. The door opened before she could knock. Daisy and Hazel appeared like two little birds, freshly woken, wearing floral pajamas and the kind of honest morning hair that couldn't be styled even if one tried. "You're here," they said at once, each grabbing a hand and pulling her inside past a hastily brushed rug, past a sofa half covered with unfolded laundry. The fridge was a gallery of magnets and drawings, a crooked purple butterfly, a library tree with too many windows and one picture frame showing 3 people, and a soft yellow space where a 4th might have been. Kayla paused half a second on that image, smiled, then walked on. Matthew was in the kitchen, his blue shirt neatly ironed. A streak of flour crossed his cheek like a fingerprint left by someone who forgot to wipe it off. He looked up, his smile wider than the night before, but still quiet. "You're here." "I'm here," Kayla replied, her voice naturally warm enough to fit the room. The pan hissed as he poured the batter. A sweet scent filled the air. Hazel climbed onto a stool while Daisy arranged plates and cutlery with the focus of a little general preparing for fireworks. "Butterflies or clouds?" Matthew asked, holding the spatula. "Butterflies," both girls shouted in unison. The batter bubbled, and he flipped it, creating a lopsided pair of wings. Hazel gasped like she'd just seen a trick of magic. "Better than last time," she said, swinging her legs. Kayla watched, realizing she couldn't remember the last time her heart had slowed like this. Maybe when she first held a newborn kitten. Maybe when her first post-pandemic patient had walked in, smiling, saying, "Doctor, my cat's healthy again." Breakfast unfolded easily, butter-melting syrup flowing in thin ribbons, plates touching the table with soft clinks. Hazel told Kayla about her music teacher. She plays a song before class, and we have to guess it by the notes, while Daisy talked about a math problem involving a rabbit who loved carrots but hated running. Kayla didn't interrupt, just asked short questions that kept the stories flowing like unbroken syrup. Across from her, Matthew wiped syrup from Hazel's chin with a napkin. When Daisy dropped a piece of butter, he bent to pick it up and said, smiling, "Even butter deserves a second flight." After breakfast, Hazel wandered off searching for something. She came back holding a comb and placed it gently on Kayla's knee. Her eyes waited without asking. "Dad braids really well." "Will you try?" Kayla saw an empty chair near the window and pulled it out. Hazel sat down her back, resting against Kayla's legs. Morning light slid through her curls, tiny sparks flashing at each stroke of the comb. The sound of it moving through hair felt like the house's background music, soft, steady, safe. At the sink, Matthew washed dishes, water running evenly, soap bubbles drifting along his arms. Sometimes he looked up, their eyes met, then he looked back down as if placing a bookmark before continuing to read. When the final strand was pinned, Hazel touched her braid and smiled, a little shy. "It's pretty." Kayla smiled back. "Not as good as your dad's." Hazel tilted her head thoughtfully. "Maybe just as good." Daisy appeared at the perfect moment, gasped in approval, then switched topics like weather. "Want to see the treehouse? It's sunny." They walked through the back door. The grass was still wet with dew leaves sticking to their shoes. The treehouse stood in the far corner of the yard, the oak trunk holding the wooden floor like a steady palm. The rope ladder swayed as Hazel climbed, Daisy following. Kayla gripped the rungs and climbed slowly. Matthew followed a few steps below, steadying her ankle by instinct. Inside, the little house felt warm. Pillows lined the walls, drawings of butterflies and rainbows were taped up crookedly where the tape had lost its stick. In the corner sat a framed photo of a woman with green eyes and softly curled brown hair. Hazel whispered almost reverently, "The password is Mommy's Angels." Kayla brushed the frame lightly with her fingertips, then pulled her hand back, as if touching holy water. Daisy sat cross-legged, her voice calm and factual. "Dad built this the summer after Mom died. Some weekends he only finished one panel because it rained, or he was tired, but he never quit." The breeze moved through the window. The curtain fluttered as if nodding in agreement. Back on the lawn, Hazel chased a yellow butterfly and Daisy showed Kayla a spotted leaf like evidence of the season. Kayla and Matthew sat on the porch steps, each holding a half-cold cup of coffee. They didn't talk much. The silence wasn't heavy. It was a light blanket draped across their knees just enough to keep warm. "It's been a long time since I let anyone into this place," Matthew said, eyes distant but voice near. "I was scared." "So was I," Kayla said. "Maybe that's because it matters." A leaf fell landing on Kayla's shoe like a period at the end of a sentence. 3 months passed in that rhythm, Kayla, cheering for 2 offbeat singers at a school recital and laughing, bringing black coffee to the construction site and learning to tell a floor plan from an elevation, picking pumpkins, wearing butterfly wings on Halloween, tying a loose shoelace on school steps. One winter night when the first snow fell, the twins fell asleep on the couch heads resting against each other. Kayla pulled up a blanket, turned off the lamp, and left the hallway light on so the house would breathe softly. Matthew walked her to the door, fingers brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. "Can I?" he began. She kissed him first, soft, slow, then sure. On the stairs, 2 small pairs of eyes sparkled in the dim. "Dad's happy again," Hazel whispered. "We did good," Daisy replied, finding her sister's hand. 6 months after the night of the whipped cream mustaches, Maple Avenue felt warm again, just enough like a habit returning on cue. The barista wiped the counter. The espresso machine exhaled softly like a satisfied cat. The corner table where Kayla had once sat alone was still in its same place, the pendant lamp above, casting a small circle of gold. Matthew arrived 10 minutes early, placed his hand on the wood, and brushed it gently like greeting an old friend. In his coat pocket was a small velvet box, so small he could almost forget it if his heartbeat didn't keep reminding him. Each time the doorbell chimed, he looked up, then lowered his eyes to the steaming cup before him. Outside, the glass yellow leaves turned slowly. The street was quieter than usual. A drafted message waited on his phone, addressed to Daisy and Hazel. "Come now." Mrs. Ferguson had them at a pizza place 2 blocks away, under the pretense of dinner and a movie, but really waiting for a signal. Kayla stepped in scarf loose around her neck, eyes searching only briefly. "I thought we were meeting at the restaurant on 5th, she asked, her tone light like a gentle tap on the shoulder. "Sit with me for a bit," Matthew said, his voice trembling at the start but steadying at the end. "I wanted to bring you back where it all began. 6 months ago, I was 17 minutes late. I thought I'd ruined everything, but 2 little girls had other plans. The whipped cream on their lips said the rest." Kayla smiled, laid her scarf across the back of the chair and sat down. No rush, no questions, no need for him to explain through words. The silence itself was what he'd been waiting for. He reached into his pocket and placed the velvet box on the table. A soft click. The lid opened. Inside was a ring, glowing just enough to remember, not enough to show off. "You came into our lives exactly when we needed someone," Matthew said, his voice brushing against old, healed places. "You loved the girls like your own. You brought light back home. You made better butterfly pancakes because you laughed. Kayla Emerson, will you?" The words "marry me" caught in his throat, not from nerves but because something rose and blocked the way. Kayla nodded before he could clear it. "Yes." Then again, firmer. "Yes." The ring slid onto her finger as if it had been measured by a ruler only the 2 of them could read. Just then, the bell rang, the same sound as 6:51 that evening long ago, though with a different meaning now. Daisy and Hazel burst in jackets, slipping off their shoulders, cheeks flushed from running. Mrs. Ferguson stood at the door, waving lightly like offering a blessing. "I knew it," Daisy shouted, answering a question no one had asked. "We picked the ring. Do you like it?" Hazel asked, holding it up to catch the light. I love it. Kayla pulled them both close, laughing through tears. The barista walked by with a tray of glasses, glanced over and smiled. Maybe later he'd go home and say, that corner table has its own light. Matthew sent one quick text, come here. The girls looked at each other and nodded, mission complete. Kayla adjusted her scarf and placed a hand over her chest, where her heart beat loud enough to feel like turning down a favorite song. They walked out together, the air carrying the faint scent of dry leaves. On the sidewalk, Daisy tugged at Kayla's sleeve and whispered, Are you Kayla Caldwell? Yet Kayla didn't answer, but she held the little hand tighter. The night didn't feel as cold as when they'd come in. It was as if the city itself had just been ironed smooth. 1 year later, on an autumn Saturday, the backyard had been turned into a small stage, string lights draped across the oak branches, white tablecloths falling softly over wooden chairs. The treehouse stood quietly in the corner, its wood darkened by a year of rain and sun, the window cracked open, the linen curtain fluttering slightly. Kayla wore a simple white dress, her hair pinned to one side, a small bouquet of white daisies in her hands. About 30 people, family, friends, colleagues, sat in 2 neat rows, forming a grassy aisle down the middle. Daisy and Hazel led the way, their butterfly dresses catching the slanted sunlight. Each held one end of a single white rose. They walked slowly, placing it on the empty chair in the front row. No one said whose seat it was. Everyone knew. Kayla took a breath, folded that image inside her like slipping a photograph into a wallet. The ceremony was short. Music came from a friend of Matthew's playing gentle acoustic guitar. The officiant, a kind neighbor, spoke softly, just enough for the wind to carry half his words away. When it was her turn, Kayla took the small microphone, glanced around, and paused at 2 pairs of bright blue eyes. I went to a cafe looking for a date, she began. Instead, I met 2 little matchmakers. They pulled me in just like they pulled their dad back in. Love isn't always on time. Sometimes it's 17 minutes late, brought in by 2 children who refuse to let happiness slip away. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for letting me love you. Matthew took the mic after her fingers clasped in front of him the way he always did when saying something that made his heart heavy. You gave me permission to love again, he said. You taught me that honoring the past doesn't mean losing the future. I love you. The girls couldn't hold back a small cheer, and laughter rippled through the crowd with applause. Their kiss took place under the oak branches. The wind moved softly, leaves rustling like distant applause. The photos didn't need much direction. Everything essential was already there. 4 people close together, butterfly wings fluttering in the evening light. The reception was simple bowls of salad bread, grilled meats, mason jars of lemonade. Kids chased each other around the treehouse. Adults swapped stories, passed plates, refilled glasses. At one point, Kayla stepped away, standing at the porch steps looking up at the treehouse. The wood's grain showed the nail marks clearly, the joints between planks, tight, simple, sturdy, like a promise. She whispered into the breeze, not for anyone to hear, but for her heart to remember, "Thank you for raising 2 brave souls who know how to recognize love. I promise to care for them." Matthew came to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders, chin resting lightly on her hair. "She'll love you," he whispered. "I hope so. I know so." Daisy and Hazel came running over with plates in hand. "Butterfly pancakes," Hazel announced proudly, like naming a dish at a fancy restaurant. The pancakes were folded thin with warm amber syrup drizzled in delicate lines. "Dad made them this morning," Daisy said, just a little too proud, and Matthew pretended to cough to hide his grin. Kayla took a bite. The taste of vanilla lifted to her nose, sweet but not too much. She looked around, paper cups, damp spots of lemonade on the white cloth little shoes smudged with grass. The guitar shifted to a faster rhythm. Someone turned the string lights on early as the sun dipped behind the roof. The Maple Avenue barista, invited as a guest, raised a paper cup from afar and winked at Kayla like an old co-conspirator. Diane, the friend who had set up the blind date, hugged Kayla tight and whispered, "Told you so." Kayla laughed, eyes glistening, the tears rising and then gently falling away. On the kitchen calendar, a new smiley face had been drawn, not to mark a date but a rhythm. Saturday pancakes would continue. The braiding would continue. The lullabies their mother loved would continue in a different voice but the same melody. The empty chair in the front row no longer felt lonely. The white rose stayed there, and the story went on in the small things: a doodled smiley, a dusting of flour on a sleeve, sticky candy fingers, blades of grass caught on a hem. Sometimes people walk into a cafe just for a warm drink and walk out with a family. Second chances don't always arrive on time. Sometimes they're 17 minutes late, carrying whipped cream, the scent of orange chicken, a pressed blue shirt, and butterfly pancakes on a breakfast table. What matters is having enough courage to say yes to the beautiful mess when it shows up. And once you do, you don't have to shout about it. Just keep the rhythm of the small things. That's enough. Sometimes we step into a cafe just looking for a hot cup of coffee and end up walking out with a whole family like Kayla Matthew and their two little matchmakers, Daisy and Hazel. Love may arrive 17 minutes late, but it comes to the right people at the exact moment the heart is brave enough to say yes. From the scent of orange glaze and flour on a cheek to the Saturday butterfly pancakes, tiny things can build the foundation of a home. And you ever caught a runaway moment or realized that your second chance showed up late but right? Share a little memory in the comments below. I'd love to read it. If this story touched, you don't forget to like, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe for more warm-hearted stories. Thank you for staying till the end, and see you in the next episode.